Hello, Aron. Welcome back to the Christian Therapist Podcast.
Thanks, Lindsey. It's
Here we
always
are.
fun to be here.
I know. So, we're going to launch right in just because this topic that we have is so rich with information and it is a topic that's near and dear to us, so much so that kind of in the last podcast we ended with this, where we even did an online course around it. And when I say we, it was you. You did the online. And that we have it up for people if they want to view it on our website. But we just wrapped up talking about the function of emotions and really the importance of us as therapists knowing emotions, really getting why emotions are so important within us and
Mhm.
what we need to do with them
Yeah.
versus what a lot of people learn to do with them, which is not what they need. But, since we are the Christian Therapist Podcast, what we also want for people to understand is the theology behind emotions. Why in the world would God give us emotions? Why did He design us this way? And I know you took a deep dive into that, which is fantastic. And that's also what, we give you this space to talk about it too in our being with marriage workshop that we do for churches. So we just love really for believers to get, I mean, I guess would you call it like a conceptualization
Yeah.
around emotions when it comes to the way God designed us?
Well, I think we get such terrible information about emotions, not just from our lives or our parents, but oftentimes from our churches.
Yes.
We mentioned that last time. Like, we're just like, pray the fear away, right? And apparently, if you didn't pray that well enough, then your faith sucks.
Yes.
Rather than that feeling's there for a reason, and what do you do with it? And that's not to say that feelings can't get stuck, but when we don't know what to do with them, then they're getting stuck makes sense. So that we
Sure.
get a lot of this information that you can't trust a feeling, that feelings will lie to you,
Uh-huh.
these kinds of things, and the way we didn't say these things specifically last time, but we kind of walked around it, which is we create stories around our feelings that aren't true, but
Yeah.
the feelings themselves are true,
Yes.
and you can always tell the difference between a thought and a feeling because a feeling will have an emotion word connected to it, right? You're dumb is not a feeling.
No. No.
There's a feeling
Not
connected
not
with that.
even I feel you're dumb. That's not even an
I feel like
emotion.
you're just not listening. I feel like you're not listening. Now, that's not a feeling, right? You're making a story up about a feeling. I have a feeling, and what I tell myself about that feeling is you're not listening to me, but
Sure.
we've skipped a step, right? I feel ignored,
Yes.
and I think you're not listening. Then there's a thought there. So understanding kind of the difference between a thought and a feeling is important,
Yeah.
uh, to try to get us keyed in there. But understanding the theology of that, I think, is really important because it's such a big part of who God is.
Right. Well, and
He's
even
broken.
too, Aaron, going back to what you said that churches will say sometimes that aren't even true. I mean, I remember a big push for people saying faith over fear,
Yeah,
almost like they cancel each other out versus work together.
right. Well, they take this verse and they don't quite understand how it works, and so they kind of like pick low-hanging fruit to make it work, which is like perfect love drives out fear. Which is true. Why would I be scared of one who loves me so well? I'm not scared of that.
Sure.
If someone's chasing me with a knife, then the fact that I love God doesn't necessarily mean my body's not going to respond with that's super scary.
Sure.
And even Jesus, right? Even Jesus demonstrated some of those feelings in the garden before he was arrested.
Yes.
Like, take this cup from me. Like, if this is not your will, take this cup from me. It was scary. He was sweating. He was crying. He was like all like anxious, but not my will, but yours be done. But if it is your will, take this cup from me. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
like the contending back and forth of what's happening in our body in as we're exercising our faith. They don't, exclude them out. But when it comes to the context of a relationship, for the person, like I'm not scared of you. I know you care about me. I don't have to be scared. Like if I feel injured by you, I don't have to be scared it's because you don't care about me. Like I don't have to be scared of that. Right. And so we kind of get them backwards in terms of how
Yes.
they work.
Yes. And that is like, I think that there are those places in going, man, we really have to also wrestle with is what we're being told biblically. Does it actually fit in this way that we operate? Because, we even talked about that before, the more that we, um, like if we take in faith over fear, the more that we try to squash our fear or not listen to our fear, the bigger it gets. And so
Right.
then we have to sit back and go, something's not working. And maybe it is the belief that we have about our fears, about our emotions, that's what's not working. And
Yeah.
maybe it's also our interpretation of the scripture that
Right.
might not be the true interpretation of the scripture. Like we have to sit back and go, I don't think that the way God designed us or the Bible that he gave us is going to contradict each other. But
Right.
the way that I interpret it or understand it or it has been taught to me could, like we gotta leave room for it could be wrong.
Right. I think that that's so good because to me, all scripture has to make sense as a whole.
Right.
Just like this piece can't be different than this piece can't be different. Like there has to be a way. Now there's times when like I just don't know how that works. But there are some consistent things in this arena when it comes to emotions that are very trustworthy. Namely, that God doesn't despise our feelings and we shouldn't just get cast out all negative feelings. Because I think that if you read through the whole Bible, you will notice that God has a lot of negative feelings, like a lot,
Yes.
all the time, right?
Yes. Well, he
Uh,
regrets.
Yeah, regret at least three times in the Bible. It specifically said he regretted, which is bonkers when you think about he already knows the future,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
He regretted, we all know about the flood, like he regretted made man in the first place. But one of the things he regretted is he regretted that he picked Saul in the first place.
Yes,
And we're all
king.
like,
Yeah.
um, you know the future. Like you knew what you were picking when you picked it.
Right.
But even though we place hope in, even though we know something may not work out or we can see how it's going to go, the context of the relationship where you long for them to respond to you in a way that they should gives us feeling of regret, right? And I think that's such an authentic experience of who God is. Like, yeah, I know he was going to go sideways. I know that David was going to be the guy. I gave the people of Israel the king they wanted. He was tall, he was beautiful, he was powerful, but he was also extremely insecure and he did all the wrong things because that's what you wanted. I gave you the king you wanted. But still, God loved Saul and he regretted like all like that pressure like put him sideways and he just didn't step up to the plate because he wanted to have that relationship with him. So there's like this context. But anger,
Yeah.
disappointment,
Sadness.
lonely,
Yeah.
sadness, right, hurt, like jealous, like all of these feelings, scripture is like replete. And not just the Old Testament. My wife and I, we watched that episode of The Chosen this current season when we're recording this, where he like made the whip and went into the temple and kicked things over and was snapping whips and like he was mad. There's this great
Yeah.
scene where this lady's trying to push her cart through the temple, and he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Well, it's a shortcut." He's like, "No." She's like, "But
Yeah.
I want to go through it." He's like, "Go back."
Yeah.
No. You were like, "Oh, geez." Like,
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I mean business. Yeah.
yeah, he was like not budging and he was serious. So you're just like, "Oh my gosh."
Mhm.
But those feelings in him, this passion, the zeal,
Yeah.
he's so full of feelings.
Yes, compassion. I mean, when I was reading through Jesus's life in the Bible, the amount that he felt compassion for people
Right?
over and over and over again.
His
And
love, his
wept. Yeah.
mercy, his compassion, like he's so he is all the feelings,
Yes.
all the feelings. Which
Yes.
as I started doing this feelings pursuit of like what's going on here, I realized that I never have to wonder if God knows how I feel
Right.
because I have all of his feelings,
Hmm.
right? So part of that theology of emotions is that you have his feelings. They're his feelings. He made you in his image.
Yes.
He didn't give you something he didn't have.
Hmm.
We're just a reflection of him. So we have all of these feelings because he has all of these feelings. And as his feelings reveal who he is to us, he knows himself. Part of his purpose of feelings for us was so that we could know ourselves and we could know one another.
Hmm.
So I can feel someone else's distress just like I can feel my distress.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
can feel being loved as much as I can feel my love for someone else.
Yes.
Like these are inherent ways that God has wired and designed, and He built that inside of us for a reason, not
Right.
just so we could get rid of them,
Right.
but
And,
because it's
even carrying in what we talked about in our last episode, feelings always feel better in connection.
always.
And in this place, being able to not only wonder, but fully know that we have a God who can feel these things with us. A lot of
Mhm.
times, like I was telling you, just in our own conversation before the podcast, is had a client today feeling so much grief going, where do I go with this grief? And the beauty is that we go to those that we know can sit with the grief. And because God has, or we have God's feelings, we know he can sit with the grief because he feels it. But also, good Lord, like how many times in the Bible has he experienced loss? And that's
Well,
just what was recorded. You
that's
know,
right.
there's how many times does he lament over separation from us and how it hurts and how he grieves? And, I mean, there's just all of these places. And then we sit and we go, oh my gosh, I don't know that anybody ever is going to feel this pain of what it's like to be betrayed or to lose someone you love before their time or any of
Right.
these things. And you go, oh my gosh, no, 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 no. Like he knows. And it's not like he's happy about it. There is a lament over the fallenness of the world.
Yep. I had a client once that was like, wanted that faith framework, but they were really struggling because oftentimes when we have really deep injuries with people, we tend to apply them to him, right? And so if I experience it this way, I just interpret it also with him. And this client was like saying, I just feel so betrayed. Like I don't even know if God understands how this feels. And part of me that's really connected is like, yes. And then the theology in me goes, well, I mean, he was betrayed by one of his closest friends.
I
To
mean, close. Inner circle.
He
Yes.
was he was at his left hand at the table. He was like right next to Jesus at the Lord's Supper
Right.
when he said, "Go do what you have to do,"
Yeah.
right? And you didn't even have to die from your betrayal,
Right.
right? And not to minimize the impact of, but I'm not trying to minimize people's experience of betrayals, but what I'm saying
Sure.
is that he knows that feeling of like viscerally the consequence of like pouring yourself into someone to redeem a relationship and pull them in and then it's still betray you. And then I said, but not just like to love someone and not be loved in return, to invest and sacrifice yourself in the hopes that they would respond. Like not just what Jesus did in his humanness, but throughout history, how many times has God just poured himself up and begged and pleaded and rescued and did all of these things, and then the kings of Israel or the whole nation of Israel would still turn away from him no matter what he did to show his love for them, like times billions. Like
Hmm.
this feeling of betrayal, like
Yes.
he knows this pain
Yes.
far more than you could even comprehend.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it puts us in this place where not only do I not have to worry that God knows my feeling, my experience of my pain helps me better understand his pain.
Oh, sure.
It's
And I would say not only his pain, but also his delight.
Yes.
All because I'll tell you, when I became a parent, I'm like, oh my gosh, how can my heart, ah, like how can my heart love something so much?
Yeah.
And then now it's like, whatever he's doing, I'm like, ooh, I want to do that with you, or not always with you because he's really good at soccer and I'm not, but like just the place of like, I want to come alongside. Like I want to be in the excitement with you. I want to be in the joys and the pain. Like I want to be in all of it with you.
Right.
And being able to sit back and go, oh my gosh, Lord, like, is this also how you feel about me?
Yep.
Like, you want to be in all the things. And when I'm not, like, this the whole thing, like, he doesn't move, we're the one that moves. We move away or closer, way close. He's just right there. But just like, like I get the pain when my kiddo moves away and maybe goes and tries to do something that I'm like, that's not going to be good. Like I want to protect you from that. Um, that I feel that too, where I'm like, okay, God, that's why you're doing that. Like that's why we've got these laws.
Right.
It's because I'm your child and you want to protect me from all the pain you can protect me from, knowing I'm still going to experience pain,
Yep.
you know?
He
And so
doesn't.
then it's this whole different thing where I'm like, oh, you're not this restrictive parent.
Right.
You're actually a very protective, loving parent that sees much bigger perspective than I do.
Yep. And as you said before, right, he's a transformer, he's a redeemer. Like scripture says that he works all things for good, not that all things are good,
Right.
right? Things are awful, but
Yeah.
he has the ability to infuse it with goodness or to bring goodness out of it. He brings beauty out of ashes, just not that ashes are pretty, but it's
Mhm.
what he does within it. And there's a sense of we don't quite understand why God makes choices that he does or why he allows us to experience some things. If he loved me, why wouldn't he protect me from every bad feeling? And there's a whole deeper theological conversation we could get into around that. But part of that whole dynamic is how does God help you understand the extent of his love if you can't understand the extent of his pain?
Mhm.
To understand how the lengths he's willing to go to demonstrate his love or the costs he's willing to pay. How
Mhm.
could you connect to that part of him if you never suffered? You've had a very anemic relationship with who God is. If he invites us to pick up our cross, it's not just so he could punish you, it's so that you'll understand the cost of what he's willing to pay for you
Mhm.
by carrying that weight also. So there's this sense of because what we like to do is we like to project on God our experience of our feelings, like they're
Mhm.
his, like our anger, ends up driving away the thing we want because it hurt us. So we drive away the thing we want, we push it, we attack it.
Mhm.
God's anger, like, is wants to pull us close, right? If he would draw close to me, then I wouldn't have to be angry, and then we would be together. His longing is for the togetherness, and he holds his accountability and his compassion equally in either hand. His anger fights for us. Our anger, like, just wants to destroy things or push things away. So there's times we push our experience of our stories of emotions on God as though they're his, but we have to read scripture to understand the context of his emotions and how he expresses them and what he's doing with them to understand who he is. And then that helps us understand ourselves.
Right.
Is if God experiences his feelings this way, and this is how he attends to them, and this is what he does for them, and this is what he's looking for, then maybe that's something that I could apply to myself
Mhm.
in terms of maybe this is something that is important. I shouldn't just not be angry, but I should know what to be angry about and angry for, not just
Yeah.
against, or to understand that God knows my hurt and he suffers with me and he loves me and
Mhm.
I can trust his goodness as well as his wisdom that I don't understand a lot of times because
Right.
he is me. I'm not as smart as him.
Mhm.
So there's this complexity, but all of that to say that God is this highly emotional being that
Mhm.
isn't lost to his feelings, but
Right.
they are inherently a part of who he is, and so they are just inherently a part of who we are.
Mhm.
And the more we get to know them, the better we'll understand who he is.
Yeah. And it also transforms, I believe, the way that we read and experience scripture and the way we read and experience his word. And even, I don't know if you've read the storybook Bible, but Sally Lloyd Jones kind of takes the Bible and makes it for kids. I
Mm,
remember reading it to Wesley when he was little, but it's all in the context of the Bible is a love story of God's love for us and how he expressed that love through his son to us. But
mhm.
the way that she connects all the stories to that love story, man, I just remember rocking Wesley to sleep and just crying, because I'm like, I get it now. I've got a kid here. Like, just you would do anything to not be separate from
Right.
them anymore. You
Yep.
would do anything to be able to get the relationship back to good.
Right.
And you would sacrifice anything. And so being able to kind of to really look at it through that lens, and even, I my whole team knows, and I think I've mentioned on here before, still in Galatians, still in the book of Galatians, and we're going back to, the emotions of Paul being completely pissed off, which again, I love to see that expressed. But he's being pissed off because people are making scripture, making the Christian faith about something that it's not. It's not about the rules, it's not about the regulations. It is about this love story and God longing not to be separate from us. But then we look and we see, I mean, what are a lot of people's distress when they come into our office? It's these longings to be with others and the pain of that separation. And it looks like multiple different formats,
Yeah.
but that's a big part of that pain. And I'm like, golly, he's with you in the pain and he has that pain. And
Right.
you're not having to walk through this alone. Because what did he say? Like, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Like, I will walk with you through it. But to echo what you said, but I'm not going to shield you from it.
Right.
That's going to be what's going to happen on the other side.
Oh yeah.
In heaven, in heaven, we won't have that.
Right. And one of the things that makes God so good, or that we can trust him, is if he isn't going to spare us from all of the pain of our disconnected feelings, neither does he spare himself. Like we mentioned in the last podcast, a good therapist will go do their own work and not spare themselves the work they're asking clients to do, but will dive in. Like God is a good therapist, right? He manages all, like he engages all of his own distress. He doesn't, as a God, he doesn't have to feel anything he doesn't want to. But yet, if he's going to allow us to go through that, then neither does he spare himself from the experience of the hurt or the longing or the disappointment or the anger or all those things. And his goal is to bring us into the goodness. And then I think that, as you said, when we get to heaven, then, all the brokenness of the world goes away, sin goes away. Like, then we just get to bask in the oneness of connection with the one we love and who loves us. And we just get to bask in those feelings because none of the other stuff will exist. So it will come, but in the meantime, like he's living out what he asks us to live out, and we can find comfort in that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, Aaron, thank you for the conversation. And I do love that this topic is such a topic that we've been able to talk about so many times, whether it has been in our member group, that we have for therapists, or if it has been in, I know you've gone to other counseling centers or different
Yeah.
organizations to give this talk. And so I'm glad that you did take that time to really record out, the full hour talk in the online course version. But I would like I feel like it is so valuable to be able to know this as a Christian therapist and to have this as a baseline because we need to walk into the room knowing what we believe and why.
Right.
Because if we've not already done that work, it's going to be hard to lead other people in that work.
Right.
Or when they say, Why am I feeling this way? Why is this happening? We'd sit and be like, I don't know. You know? But we need to know, right? Like that's a part of the onus on us as therapists is that we do need to constantly be searching and knowing and really grasping, why does this show up in us? Why does this happen in us? What am I seeing in front of me? I need to be able to put words to it and make sense of it, and make sense of it in the context of who God is and who
Yep.
He is really, which is kind of bringing in what we talked about at the beginning, is sometimes if we're under a teacher that doesn't really know who God is, and again, that's what Paul talked about in Galatians. He got real mad at these people that were trying to twist the gospel
Yep.
and make it something that it's not.
Yep.
And I'm always so thankful that God sent me on a journey of really getting into Bible studies and reading scripture for myself, because then it became my own. And it
Yeah.
was my own experience with God. And I was able to kind of sit and wrestle things out within me so that I can go, no, this is what I believe, and it fits the
Yeah.
way that we're designed.
And it really makes sense too, as you're talking about Galatians and how Paul's mad at, I mean, Peter's mad at Paul.
Yeah.
Because when we get distressed and we get overwhelmed, we revert back to what we grew up with. And that's exactly what happened to Paul, is he was under all this pressure and he reverted back to the legalism he grew up under.
Hmm.
And so it's easy to revert back. We get under distress and we fall back into old patterns. And so holding on to change can be difficult.
Hmm.
But the more we pursue God with wholeness, right? If we seek, we'll find the more we lean towards the distress instead of away from distress, then we begin to discover all the richness and the goodness that God has inside of that distress. And we get to be agents of transformation. We get to be agents of redemption in people's lives, you know, being part of that process of working all things for good
Hmm.
for the people that we care about, that are our clients. And so there's this huge benefit in understanding and seeking that out. So I love the fact that you shared that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Another good conversation. And I look forward to chatting with you on our next episode.
See you then.
Bye.